All right. Looks like we're good to go. Sorry for being 5 minutes late, but I am back again for yet another Moonshire Monday. Thank you so much for joining. The setup is a little bit different today compared to how it usually is, but I had a whole new setup planned for like a countdown timer, but I started running it and OBS just wasn't capturing it correctly, so I had to kind of bail on that idea. Allfather! Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Another amazing donation to kick off the stream. Thank you so much, Allfather, and hello to another Moonshire Monday. Thank you so much. That's amazing. And so many other people in the chat as well. We got Angry Berry, Ebuo Saba, Bellcat, Future34, Welltrill, Adele, Jeruve. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate all the support and all the people joining in. Because it has been a long road working on this game, and it's still not quite there. One thing that you'll notice, actually there's a few things that you might notice about today's stream, is that, one, the music bot above me is a little bit different. It's now doing a constant track. I wrote a script that is actively reading from my music player, and it's going to display on screen what song is playing. And I'm very happy with how it turned out. It looks really nice. The scroll is a nice little bit of movement. The other thing I was going to talk about is what's on screen right now. It's this like parallax effect. So really over the past week, I didn't even notice the stream started. Yeah, I was 5 minutes late. That was definitely my fault. Over the past week, I was working a lot on, what is it, open source software. I've been making a lot of new scripts and a lot of open source things. So first is that I open sourced the parallax code for my game. So for Moonshire, I have this like parallax effect that takes place in a few different scenes. And I decided to take the time and make it so it was a exportable package, or it's all contained in this file called lookout.lua. So if you're ever curious about how parallax effects work, I have it all laid out here, and I have it commented pretty nicely as well. I think that should help out quite a bit. But to leverage that further, I then took this lookout code on GitHub that I made, and I started working on this new like application that's going to help with streams. So this is just an example of like one of those parallax effects that I made, and I recolored it to look a little bit nice. But this program is meant to be like a starting soon, and you can put in like a countdown. I was kind of showing this last week a little bit, but I got it a little bit screwed up this week, so it's not working quite as well. But I have it all set up with like a UI and everything too. So you're able to change what music's playing. You're able to change your font. So now it's this font instead. And then you can load entirely different scenes. So I have like this, I have a bunch of junk scenes, but I have the clouds. Oh, I can't resize the window, but yeah, so the idea is now in OBS, I'll be able to just open up this scene, and I can like change the timer however I want and make a countdown, play different music. So like a pre-stream music. I'm also wanting to try some clever things with it too, where it could set up as like a server where it's reading from the chat, and maybe it could display people's names on screen, or like if I have this cloud scene, maybe everyone that chats, their name could like show up and like fly by. Is it loading for anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry if there's any problems with the stream. Hopefully there's no problems for folks, but new house, right? Yeah, so it's not a new house. It's actually the exact same house. If you do a before and after between what the stream looked like in my camera before compared to now, all I did was I swapped positions. So I was on that wall behind me, like that's where my desk was, but now I moved it to the opposite wall, just because it helps with the angle a little bit better, and also I have more room. Like where the camera is, there's space behind it, so there's a lot of room for me to like move things around, and I can set lights up behind it. There's more space behind me too, so if I ever needed a green screen, I could actually set it up behind me. I'm experimenting with a new camera, so I'll be able to have like more diverse shots, and I might even try like blurring the background, or I don't know. I'm just trying a lot of different things with the stream and the setup, but I really do like this new angle. I think the new angle works out a lot. The other thing I tried, or that I'm doing this stream, there's so many different things that are new this stream, but I am now on a physical Ethernet connection. So I wasn't on one before because every time I connected to one, it would completely kill my upload speed. I would get really good down speed, but my upload speed would completely get killed. But now I figured out what the problem was. The problem was my computer's Ethernet port is actually busted or something. I tried the drivers are completely updated, but the Ethernet port was just not doing any upload speed. It was so weird. And then when I switched to a different port, or I bought an external Ethernet port, and I used that, and it worked. Everything's fixed. So I'm thinking that the streams are going to be a lot smoother. I changed my chair position. Yeah, I'm just on the other direction. But hopefully the streams will be a lot smoother, where the past few streams we've been having problems where the stream was actually completely getting dropped. But it should be a lot better now because I'm physically connected, and even if I couldn't be physically connected, I'm physically closer to the router now that I'm on this wall compared to the other one. How can I export my Love2D game to an executable? That's a good question. Let me show that real quick. So if you Google search Love2D game distribution is what you're looking for. I should make a video on this. That's a good suggestion. So on the Love2D wiki, check out this page for game distribution. It's really worth taking the time to read through all these steps and all of what's going on here, because even if I could show you, it might be a little bit different for your setup, and it does require you to use like the command line. My browser crashed. Look, it's not the browser crashed. Well, at least it's showing. I think I need to use something other than Edge. I've been using Microsoft Edge for a while, but every time I start streaming, yeah, I think that the YouTube stream crashed the entire browser, so that's so strange. Edge is so bad, LMAO. Well, so here's the thing. Edge was certainly not really that good. Yeah, so I'm gonna get some flack for using Edge. No, even if I was using Chrome, I don't think that it would change too much, because this is a problem with Chromium. So when Edge came out, it was kind of just like the new Internet Explorer. It wasn't very good. And there was a point like 5 years ago. It was while I was working at Microsoft, ironically. I think it was right when I moved there. It was right when I moved there, so it would have been in like 2018 or 2019. They moved to Edge Chromium. So it's built on the same software as Chrome. And from that point onward, Edge and Chrome really aren't that much different. They're both pretty much like the same. You can still run like Chrome extensions in Edge. That's how similar they are. So it's not the same as it used to be, but I do understand that Edge still has its reputation. It's like a default browser, and people don't really get it or don't really like it. But yeah, I need to completely reset the browser because it crashed. That's crazy. I can't use Chrome right now because I'm not set up right now. But I know that it's funny that the screen says starting soon, even though I've already started. But yeah, this program that I was working on, it's able to play a bunch of different scenes, and you can change the message and. Be right back. Thanks for watching. It's really, really cool that I'm able to have this like really flexible thing, and I'm gonna make it open source as well. That's the other thing, is that I want to make it open source where other people can use this exact same software. What does the title of the stream mean? It's just kind of like a joke where like the music player above me is different, the backdrop behind me is different. I have like this new countdown. I have a better internet connection. So like Moonshire Monday really will never be the same. Also, like I think that like the angle of everything, the shot composition, how I have more in frame. Like you can see my belly. Is that really a good thing? That's not really a good thing, but I heard recently that it's more personable when you have more in shot, as opposed to like when you have just like your shoulders up. That's a pretty typical streamer angle, and I don't think it's very flattering. I think that having more, I might need to I might need to step it up a bit. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm almost laying down. Yeah, I mean, this is a recliner. I love my videos, they're so useful. Thank you, I appreciate that. It's okay, it's natural. I was writing a draggable script that you can attach to objects to click and drag, but the object always lagged behind the mouse. Have I tried something like this? Lagged behind the mouse. Well, that makes it sound like the update like is happening a frame later. So that's always something you need to consider, because if you look at like an update loop, if I have a good example of this. So in this, man, my nose is itchy. In this program that I've been working on, where I show, where would it be? I think it would be in not in this init. It would be in a different init. I think there's an example. Oh, there used to be an example. There was an example where having UI standard, what I was doing is I was doing something like this. If stage.ui.active, then stage.ui close. And then I was doing if not state, then yeah. So I was doing something like this where the dependency on what goes first was influencing the other thing. And that makes it sound like maybe somewhere in your code, when you're updating the position based on the mouse position, maybe you are setting that position at a different point to what it's drawing at, where there's a frame delay. It will never be the same, but we won't notice. You know, that's probably for the best, honestly. Add potions, but not for healing purposes. Yeah, that's actually a good idea, and I thought about that, having like a weapon that is just potions. Because I've heard about, like, or I've seen games where they have a class of character that, like, they throw explosives, and that's their attack style. What programming language you do not recommend learning in any sphere? I would normally not recommend learning any legacy language, something like, I don't know, Fortran or assembly or something really old and outdated, unless you are pursuing like a particular career in that. Man, is my camera lagging? I hope that the stream's not lagging with my camera. It looks like it is lagging though. Yeah, it really does look like it's lagging a bit. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully it'll stop doing that very soon. Yeah, look at that. When it's like dropping frames every few seconds. The weekly assembly, hey. You know, you're kind of right, because I do mention it once in a while. It was stopping for a few seconds. Oh man, it really is lagging like crazy. At least on my end, it looks like OBS is actually dragging. I wonder if it's dragging because I have this game running. That would be ironic if that was the problem. I don't think so. But I know that it's OBS that's lagging because, like, the music player above me keeps, like, juddering. Seems fine to me. Okay, hopefully that it's just an issue on that I'm seeing on my end. But, like, whenever I'm looking at the stream and seeing what it's outputting, it looks like it's dropping frames. Hopefully it's not doing that for other people. I love Undertale. I'm a big fan of Undertale, too. Okay, so one thing I think that I haven't really made too much progress specifically on Moonshire. I think that really all the stuff that I have here is what I was working on last week, because really I spent so much time trying to get the stream set up just right. But it feels really comfortable now because I have like the game window up and running right now. I can play it. I can see chat on 2 different angles. What I think of my profile picture, it looks good. Yeah, I remember you were working on that a few different times. I showed my draggable code to Discord group, and they told me I can't get a better result than it. I mean, if you want, you can post it in the Chillercade coding channel, and we can take a look at it. I would also, I don't know, maybe there is some like trick to it that we're not just missing. Sorry, I need to keep track of the music. Sometimes the music gets really loud all of a sudden. At least for me. I need to adjust my headphone volume once in a while. So, in terms of what I need to work on with this game, there's a bit more work that needs to be done with the enemy AI. Because, like, look at that. They don't interact with the water currently. Currently, the enemies could potentially go straight into the water and just float on it. I'm gonna try and bait that. Yeah, there, look. He's just walking on water. That's so messed up. So this is a problem with the new mobs. I changed how the mobs are coded recently, or recently, over the past few months. And since then, there's just a lot of like edge cases that I need to take care of. And one thing is, like, when an enemy gets into the water here, should it die or should it be able to like swim? I think some enemies should be able to swim and some shouldn't. Also, that death animation needs to be fixed big time. It's no good. I started game dev, but it stopped since I don't see a future. I'm doing web dev now. Listen, here's the thing. Don't treat it like some kind of career ending or starting move. You can be a game developer without like pursuing a game development degree or without having a job at a game development company. Because guess what? I never had a game development job. I don't have a game development degree, but would you say I'm a game developer? I think that I can consider myself a game developer. You can still have a future in game development. Don't just like give up on it because right now the big companies that like produce big games aren't hiring. That just means that you should pursue game development in other spaces. I do game development as an indie and I love it. There are indie developers that you could collab with. You could produce your own indie games and that would be fine. Maybe that's not a viable career path, but that's always something that you can do and work on. I personally don't make any money from game development. I make money from teaching game development, but that's you know, it's its own thing. Once this game releases, hopefully I'll start making some money. I still want to game dev. It's my hobby. I think I'll do game dev after I'm stable. Well, yeah, that's a very wise take to have because I think in general, it's important to have a good career first before you start pursuing creative interests. I want everyone to be able to pursue their creative passions, like if it's art or if it's coding or if it's game development or if it's music. I want everyone to be able to do whatever it is that they want that like creatively fulfills them. But it's also important to be realistic. Does this creative passion actually pay the bills? And for most of the time, the answer is no, unfortunately. Like for some very specific cases, you can be a musician and make it comfortably financially, but normally you have to supplement that with other work, and then you can like and the other thing is that like when you try to make like being a painter as your full-time work, you're gonna learn to hate painting because you're gonna treat it as work. You're not gonna treat it as like this fun skill that you used to have an interest in doing. I wouldn't say that it's something that cut and that like black and white. I would try to treat things more lax and take things one step at a time. I've been doing game development my whole life, and I still have yet to reach the point where I release a game for money. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I've been building up my skills. I've been building up my other careers, and like financially, I'm able to pay my bills thanks to that like actual money making career that I built up. That's kind of what I'm egging people on to do, is that I want everyone to be creative and do things that make you happy, but also if you don't have money coming in, you're not going to be happy. I promise you that. It's one of these things where I see people say like, I don't care about the money in game development. I don't care about like if I'm an artist, I don't care about money. It's fine. I'll just get by. The thing is, if you try to get by, it's not going to be fun. If you can't pay your rent, you can't make a game because you're going to be too busy like having to make money, and it's really uncomfortable. The best way to make a game is to like have yourself set up in a comfortable, steady financial position, and then you'll have so much free time and comfortability and flexibility that you'll be able to work on your games, and then over time your skills are going to get so good that eventually, whatever your creative passion is, you're going to get so good at that creative thing that people will start paying you money for it. Like I'm only 29 years old. I've been making games my whole life, but I still have a long life ahead of me. And like, let's say I was a painter or a musician. If I've been painting for 15 years, that's a long time. But there are painters that have been painting for 40 years, and those paintings are phenomenal. Like that's where you get some expertise, mastery of painting. Like there's no rushing into this. Sorry for being annoying, but I need answers. How do I detect two hitboxes touching each other? It's different for every different shape. I would recommend starting with circles. Treat everything as a circle, and then just do a distance check. So like, is the player touching the dummy here? You can check if the player is colliding with the dummy if the distance between them is close. So like, let's say the distance between them is 16 pixels. We can say if the distance between these two characters is less than 16 pixels, then that counts as a collision. That's the easiest type of collision you could do. And you could do that with like this thing too. You could say it's a circle hitbox around the base, and if there is a distance check, then you could count that as a collision. I would say that's a good first step. Anything above that gets a little bit complicated, where you have to use a bit of math to figure out if like two squares or two rectangles are overlapping. There's some math and calculations that go into that, but it's the other option is utilizing a physics engine. So in my case, I'm using the built-in Love2D physics engine along with some like wrapper code. So that's how you see all of these like squares and these rectangles. And this is an octagon, I think, or sorry, yeah, it's an octagon. So you got a bunch of different shapes and physical aspects, and I can't actually walk through these. So these are performing some calculations with physics and shapes and overlaps that I'm not actually worrying about. The code itself, the library for physics, is worrying about that. So it's a combination of whatever you want to do. Some things it's better to do the simple distance check stuff, and sometimes it's better to use a physics engine to handle complicated collisions or with a big multitude of... One thing that's nice about a physics engine is that it pushes you back in bounds if you get stuck inside of an object. So for example is this dummy here. This dummy is solid, but the player, when he rolls, you can roll through the dummy. So the physics properties change. But what happens if you get your physical properties back while you're overlapping? So like this. You see how you like get pushed out of bounds? It's nice that this physics engine is able to automatically push you back out from things that you shouldn't be overlapping with. And it's the same with these walls here. If you get stuck in a wall, it's going to push you out of the wall. That's what's nice about these physics engines. It's the code is so simple. Able to walk through equals false. So simple. Excuse me. I'm still recovering from the head cold from last week a little bit, but I'm going to be okay. When I made graph tuft movement, I used sine function to make them move, or numbers like go on left until angle reach different number. It's more like until angle reach different number. So specifically, it's using a tween. It's using some complex tween that uses like a sine in, sine out to get that swaying movement. If you go to, there's this website that I like showing off, and I'll use Chrome this time. It's called easings.net. Easings.net. So this website's pretty cool because it visually demonstrates different easing functions. So the grass probably uses something like ease in out sine or ease in out quad because it does like a... Whereas like ease in cubic, it's a slow and then speed up and then immediately stop. So you can use any combination of these to get different movement types. And that's how it's able to get that like very fluid grass wind movement. And I'm just applying it to the rotation value. And yeah, like you said, up to a certain angle. Music name, it's always on screen. I just wanted to detect if the hitboxes are touching and not have any collision. If that's the case, then yeah, I would do what I suggested with the distance check. Or you could write a very simple function, excuse me, man, my nose is so stuffy, so stuffy. You could write a very simple function that detects if two rectangles are overlapping, depending on what shape you want to use. Like I said, using circles for your hitboxes and just using a distance check is the easiest. Is it good to use Winfield for that? You could if you want to. One thing to worry or to be careful about is that Winfield is probably going to be outdated with Love 12, but you still can. Really, Winfield is super lightweight. It's a very small, like, you know, code file. It doesn't really have too much going on for it. But I would say if you are going for something simple, then I would use something simple. Winfield in a full physics engine like this is pretty heavy compared to what you might need. If like you said, all you need to do is check if two rectangles are overlapping, you can probably look up online a function that does that and then just put it into your code. But if you want to use Winfield to do all that, then that's okay too. Like I use a physics engine for my code, and that works. We're blessed with hard gold, soul silver today, always. I should look through and get some stats about what games and what songs, like proportionally, are included in the playlist. I do know that there are 284 songs in my playlist. So there's 284 songs in my playlist, and I'm curious, like, what percentage of them are from Pokemon? What percentage of them are from Zelda and Mario? Because I can show you the list real quick. Yeah, this is the list of games that I have included. Animal Crossing, Bomberman, DK. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. And then Miscellaneous has like a few different specific games. Yeah, actually, there's a pretty good variety. It's not just Pokemon and Zelda. That's what I thought it was. There's a Love 12. Yeah, it's available if you look on their GitHub, I think. But it's not, like, publicly, or like, what is it? It's not the official release yet. The official latest release is still Love 11.5, I think. Could I make a boat to not drown in water? So I have a plan for that, actually, where there's an item that lets you swim. And yeah, so right now you can only like go in the water for a little bit. But I think I have item and then buoyant breaches. Got a donation from Pixie's Game Dev. Keep doing what you do. You inspire a lot of people. Thank you so much. That's a really kind message and a really kind donation. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, oh yeah, so I was going to say that now that I got the buoyant breaches, you don't drown anymore. Okay, quick question. Is there a way I can delete an image when it's drawn without using an if statement? Delete an image. Well, so the way you're describing that sounds odd, because when images get drawn to the screen, let's show draw. You said the word delete, and nothing gets deleted when you're drawing stuff to the screen. If you're drawing a sprite to the screen, the sprite is in memory, and then you are using an if statement, essentially, to decide if you want to draw that sprite or not. You probably are not going to want to conditionally load the sprite in and out. Well, maybe you would, I guess. But long story short, no. Like, look, all of my stuff is handled with for loops and if statements. It's just conditionally checking a bunch of stuff and drawing it. How do I protect my channel since my 2 old channels got deleted or banned by YouTube? Why did they get deleted or banned? I've never had that happen before. Excuse me, my throat's stuffy. Excuse me. Do I work on this project only on Monday? No, I work on it every day. But a pinball minigame would both be fun and hilarious. That would be fun. I love pinball. Pinball is a thing that me and my family love. Whenever we're like on trips or we're out, we always stop at the pinball machines. I discovered my channel, fun stuff. Your game looks great. Thank you, appreciate that. Movie sequel dude. Yeah, how do I pronounce my name? I say Chalacade. Kyle, what have I been playing lately? Ever since I finished Deltarune, I haven't really played anything. I've just been focusing on working on the game and focusing on other open source like projects. That's the main thing, is that I've been kind of really into non-game coding recently. Have I ever played RDR2? I have not played it myself, no, but I have it. I own it, and I really should, because it's one of, you know, the most iconic games ever. It's one of my dad's favorite games. Using GameMaker instead of Lua, though. GameMaker is awesome. I used GameMaker before I switched over to using Love2D and Lua. GameMaker is really awesome just because it's so approachable and the drag and drop coding is so nice to work with. Is Snake Case or Camel Case preferred in Lua? There's no preference. You can name anything whatever you want. I do Camel Case for functions. Actually, I do Camel Case for everything. So for anyone who doesn't know, Camel Case. This is Camel Case. And then I guess Snake Case would be this is Snake Case. Yeah, so Camel Case is a term that you use to describe when you name things like this. I would make a video about my old GameMaker channel. I really do need to make that. I know. I really do need to make that. Ad. Sorry about that. Oh, wasn't it like Snake Case? That makes more sense. I've actually never heard of Snake Case before. This is Snake Case. There we go. That looks better. I see these used equally in Lua files. So I use a lot of open source Lua code, and I look at a lot of Lua code and what other people are writing. I probably see this format a little bit better, but, or sorry, a little bit more. I see it a little bit more often. But personally, I use Camel Case more, just because it's more concise. You're very late? No, you're not. You're fine. Thank you for joining, Butteriffy. No underscores and no capitals in a variable would be awful to read. Yeah, I mean, it definitely would be. There are times when I do that. I'm trying to think of a good example of when I would have done that. Speaking of Deltarune, I love this song, by the way. It's been stuck in my head the past few days. Mario Kart is really cool. Yeah, I was playing Mario Kart World at my neighbor's house, and we really love it. I was vibing with it. It does sound like there are some specific, like, minor details that they could be improving on. Like, the intermission tracks don't really seem like my personal favorite. I prefer the, like, 3-lap format. Because with a 3-lap format in a Mario Kart game, you're able to better understand the layout on the first go-around. And then on the later iterations, you can, like, memorize what's best to do or what tricks to use. How am I feeling today? I'm feeling mostly good, but my throat is a little bit stuffy and my nose is stuffy. Do I prefer Undertale or Deltarune? Um, I think as a complete package, I prefer Undertale just because it's like a finished product. But like I think Deltarune has higher peaks. Like there are parts of Deltarune that I like overall more, and so I like that more. You know. Also, I have more music in my playlist that's from Deltarune compared to Undertale. Have I ever tried OpenGL with C++ or even C++ language itself? I don't think I've ever tried well, I mean, what are my shaders written in? Shaders. Oh, it's GLSL, not OpenGL. But GLSL is the OpenGL shader language, so I do interact with it in some level, but I don't use C++ directly. I mean, I did. So when I was in college, year 2, they switched us from Java to C++ because there was a class that teaches you how to use references and pointers and like the complex like polymorphism stuff and how to really properly organize a project. There was a really, really good class I took on that, so I do have experience with C++. Also, I had a job out of college that was based in C++ as well, so I have a lot of experience doing that. But it's not really a language that I would go back to unless I was specifically targeting some kind of like low-level product or, you know, like low-level device. Because most of the stuff I want to work on is something that can be run on an operating system. And since that's the case, there's normally some kind of interpreter like Lua interpreter that makes things a lot easier to work with compared to C++. C over C++ over Java over JS. That's an interesting list, but yeah, I guess my list would probably go, man, I don't really like any of those languages, honestly, if I'm being honest. I like Java the most, but I really don't like Java. I'd say Java is better than JavaScript, which is better than C++, which is better than C. And better than is such a weird way of saying it. It's more like a preference because people love coding in C. But C is also a very like old school language. It's missing some quality of life features, and I'm kind of used to that. I think it makes coding a lot easier and more fun to work with. A few small changes to the look. What secrets did I learn as a Microsoft employee? A lot of the secrets, I wouldn't say any secrets, but the tricks are more like tricks of how to get software out the door and deployed, because everything is a lot harder than it seems. It takes teams of people to do simple things, and it helps put into perspective what I'm capable of. I guess working at Microsoft as a software engineer, I wasn't strictly just doing coding. I did a lot of coding, but I also had to work on deploying that code and working with other people to review it. And then I had to present ideas in meetings. I would actually talk with customers to see what features they wanted and didn't want. That was more of a product manager thing. But working in all of these different aspects of the pipeline was super helpful for me in understanding what goes into just the whole process. It's kind of like what I was talking about, where you could focus in on just being a really good artist, and you can create games by collabing with a game developer or like by collabing with a coder. You could be, or you could be a jack of all trades. But in order to be a jack of all trades, you have to spend a lot of time coding, a lot of times doing art, a lot of times doing sound, and by the end of it, you'll be able to do everything, which is nice, but it takes a long time. And it's the same with like my experience with Microsoft, where it forced me to do a lot of things that just gave me some exposure to what, you know, working on a cloud service is like. So I did like web development stuff. So I got a lot of ideas for how to deploy a website and how it's hosted on Azure and what goes into the testing process and how to keep things up and steady. I got a lot of experience with on-call responsibilities. It put into perspective like what I'd be getting myself into if I started working on a live service. Not necessarily a live service game, but any sort of service that's live. That includes things like a merch website. I want to eventually make a merch website where I can sell stickers, but that's a live service. It's a service. It's a website that people visit and interact with and spend money on in order to receive something. So running a live service like a website takes some knowledge and know-how, and when things go wrong, it takes some knowledge to figure out how to fix it. I would say that all of that sort of experience is what I got out of working at Microsoft. Love the channel, keep going. Thank you. I really appreciate you, the kind words. What can you say about the Don't Kill Games petition? I would say in general, I'm supportive of it. I think that people should go sign it. It seems like a good thing. The only thing I will say is that like the criticisms it gets are mainly like fine-tuning specific details and like it's hard. Let's see, how should I phrase this? There's questions like legal liability. Let's say that's one question I have. I'm totally on board with stop killing games, but I do have questions about like how does liability work when a company forfeits their game to the users, and then the users are now running it using their IP. Like, I can see that opening up some questions and some concerns where that just needs to be reviewed by like a proper committee of people that know how law works. But other than those like open questions that I'm not sure how will be addressed, I think that really Stop Killing Games is a great initiative, and I think people should support it. I think it's great. Am I going to put Moonshire on console? Potentially. It just depends on how the Steam launch goes. So I'm definitely focused on getting it out on Steam first. And maybe after that, I would consider mobile as well, because I'm getting a lot of people asking about mobile. There's a lot of people that actually don't have computers and they only have phones. So allowing people to play the game on mobile would be a big boost, I think. C is only a procedural language and Lua is multi-paradigm. You said multi-pilgrim. Yeah, it's multi-paradigm. Childish Kid, could you explain the difference between C and Lua? I mean, yeah, the C, it's just the different things that they target. Normally, C targets, like, a computer chip, whereas Lua is going to be run on Windows through a Lua interpreter. So Lua requires Windows or some operating system to be running, and it requires some program to be running the Lua interpreter, but once you're there, it's really easy to use. On the other hand, C is like really old style code that you can more directly interact with the hardware. So if you needed to actually interact with like a computer chip or some kind of specific part of the device, you would probably want to use C or maybe C++, because those are able to like interact with low level stuff. And Lua could as well, but you would need Lua to have some kind of like helper function through C or C++ that's tied to the hardware. That's generally what the gist is, but the other difference is that Lua has a lot of quality of life features that makes coding a lot easier and more streamlined, whereas C is old school and doesn't have those things, but the positive is that it can run anywhere. I think that Moonshire Mobile would have weird controls. It depends, because yeah, under its current setup where you have like a pickup button and multiple different things that you're working with in terms of like the controller, I would agree. It would probably be a little bit too cramped, but in this latest version, the controls are really simple, where now all you need is directional controls to move, a button to attack, and then a button to dodge. And I think potentially it could even be simplified to touch controls. Something I was considering is that I could make it so if you tap and hold, the player could walk towards that direction. So I'm visualizing this on mobile, by the way. Picture the screen as a phone, and you like tap and hold, and the player moves towards that direction that you're tapping and holding. And then you just tap and like you tap once and you attack. So like I'm tapping and the player is attacking in this direction. And then to dodge, maybe you could have it so a swipe. You swipe in a direction and that causes you to roll. So maybe that could potentially be mobile controls. I think that would be kind of fun. Or it could be even simpler, where it's just you have on-screen an on-screen joystick, an on-screen button, and then you're good. Call it a day. It's a little hard for me. Yeah, I understand. The demo has some balancing concerns, and really, the demo on Steam hasn't been updated for like a year. It's pretty outdated. There's a lot of stuff that I want to do differently. Why will Moonshire never be the same? Moonshire Monday will never be the same, just because there's so many different changes in the stream that make it a lot better. Allfather, another donation. Thank you so much. Going to be heading out. Family issues. I hope everything goes well with your family issues. Thank you so much again for the donation, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate everyone's support, but I appreciate the donation. Allfather, thank you so much. I have boss fights. Yeah, there's boss fights in the demo, and there's boss fights. Yeah, there's lots of boss fights in the game. I would say that this game has a big focus on two main things. The first being exploration, where you have like this map of grid cells that you explore. It looks really messed up right now because it's like in between stages, but the two main focuses are you're exploring these different grid cells while also doing combat encounters. So combat encounters, I'm gonna get rid of these hitboxes, by the way. That includes like that slime encounter, but there's also boss fights, and I have a bunch of designed and working in the demo version, but in this new version with the new mobs, I think things are going to be a little bit simpler, or at least the code is going to be simpler, because that's the main thing that I've been doing over the past like year with all this stuff. It's just rewriting all this code to be just better. Some of it is just so bad. It's based off of such old code and old ideas that it didn't really work out. So I went from using all this enemy code right here, and changed it over to this mob code where it's all separated into individual pieces and files. That's going to be a lot easier to work with. So long-term strategy, make the code easy to work with, a lot of stuff that you can do with it, and then make content after things are kind of like solid. But that's kind of the problem with development, is that you never know when your code is solid. You never know what ideas are going to come to you. You don't want to limit yourself based on just what your code can do. You should always be open to adding new ideas to your code. But in my case, it is making the timeline for this game just out of control. It's almost like I'm making negative progress because I keep going back, changing the code, and that requires changes to other code. And the result is the code is a lot better. The functionality under the hood is so nice and a lot better than it was. But man, it takes so long. It just takes so much time. I started getting Godot the other day. There's so much documentation, but the first time genuinely enjoying my time going through any type of documentation. Cool, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I think Godot is, in general, pretty approachable. And having an engine that has like a full setup that you can like drag and drop stuff into, and there's modules and the nodes, I think that Godot is a really good choice for starting out. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I'm going to add arrows to tell new players where to go in the map. No, my game's map is simple enough that you do not need arrows or any sort of guidance. If the map was some kind of like big, huge open world where the maps were enormous and there was tons and tons of stuff to see, then yes, I would say that that idea has merit. But in my case, I'm more just designing the maps to flow in a natural way, and they interconnect in themselves in meaningful ways that you can kind of explore in really cool ways. Websites are similar to game dev, the 80-20% rule. Oh, totally. Things take forever with pretty much everything. It's really like a year ago, I thought the game was on track to be done by now, but really I haven't really made any forward progress. I've been making lateral progress. All of the code is so much better, so that it's setting myself up to make a lot of new content really quickly and a lot better. A lot of it comes down to just learning. You don't really know what you don't know. Also, I'm sorry, the music is kind of like quiet. I'm trying to keep an eye on the like music volumes and making sure that I can adjust it, because some songs are really quiet and some of them are really loud. It just depends on the track. The game has multiplayer. Not functionally currently, but I'm going to attempt to add it. I haven't like confirmed that it's going to be in the game because you never know what is going to happen. One thing that I did do is I have it set up where one Steam client, so this Steam client, is able to connect with a different Steam client. It's able to connect with your Steam friends. So if your Steam account is friends with another Steam account, it's able to show you who else you're able to connect with. You can click on their name, and it connects their clients together. So I have the networking side of things handled, where at least the connection is able to be made. Now the challenging part is that while I'm doing this big code rework, I will also need to rework like the player code and the enemy code to accept multiple clients at once. Please increase the volume. Yeah, I'm trying to like adjust it as it comes and goes. I understand that it's a case-by-case basis. How did the spike linking get fixed? It never got fixed. It never got fixed. Here, I think that this has spike blinking over here. Yeah, check it out. It's still blinking. I don't know what the problem is still. I haven't taken the time to look into it. I tried that one time on stream, but still haven't figured it out. I'm adding multiplayer. I'm trying to. Have I tried Solar 2D as a tool? If that's how you liked this engine. Solar 2D. Solar 2D. Solar 2D is a Lua-based game engine with focus on ease of iterations and usage. Let's see. I've never heard of this, by the way. Call any native library. Plugins for all needs. Is it on GitHub? Corona. Solar 2D game engine. Oh, rebranded Corona. I've heard of Corona. Okay, so they changed the name. That's fine. Corona SDK. I have heard of that. Have I found out how to fix the death animation? I mean, I haven't tried to work on it, really. The death animation, since it works, I haven't really spent any time on it. What is MIT license? That's a good question. So, this website called GitHub, and with open source code, it's very important that when you share your code with someone, you also provide a license. So that's something like license.md. A license, all it is it's this very short blurb that explains that you are allowed to use this code in your own projects. Or it explains that you can't use this code in your own projects, or you have to pay for it, or you have, there's all these different things that you can permiss or you can limit. And it's really important to include this, because if you don't include a license with the software that you distribute on GitHub, then people won't know if it's even legal for them to use it, and so they won't use it. And it's really important for you as a developer, if you're using other people's code, to always make sure that there is a license included. Otherwise, you might be legally liable for like some kind of, problem. Have I planned any updates for future of Moonshire? I mean, yeah, I'm working on Moonshire all the time, and if you're talking about updates like after it's done, I've like brainstormed some ideas, but at the same time, that's so far off in the future that I don't really want to take too much time planning out like post-game content or DLCs. That's not something that's on the table right now, just because that's so far off in the future. But I would have to try out Solar 2D to see how it compares. Do they talk about Love 2D? No, they don't talk about Love 2D anywhere. The easiest development tool for 2D games and mobile applications. That's a bold claim. Solar 2D allows creating apps easily, up to 10 times fast. What? Where are they getting these metrics from? Solar 2D speeds up the development process. Update your code, save the changes, and instantly see the results. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. That's a cool feature that I don't think Love2D supports right now. I think that with Love2D you have to rebuild or rerun. You can use it in commercial and non-commercial. Yeah, so sorry for not explaining properly. MIT specifically, MIT is one of the most common ones. It basically just means this software is free to use, and it's also free for you to distribute it. But it's also a liability check. I'm starting to understand specifically what this Solar 2D is all about. The live builds is very cool. That's a cool feature that I do wish Love2D had, and I would use it. Lua is an open source scripting language designed to be lightweight. Oh wow, look, they say Lua is currently the leading scripting language in games and has been utilized in Roblox, Elder Scrolls Online, Don't Starve, World of Warcraft, Angry Birds, Civ, and many popular franchises. Who made this engine? I want to look into the history of Corona SDK and where it came from. Just because I'm not familiar with it. Okay, back to Moonshire Monday. What are the sources though? What are the sources though? If you got C# as scripting, I would disagree. I mean, yeah, there's people in coding will sometimes have like debates on terminology and phrases. Like for example, sometimes in game development, people will talk about framework versus engine. What's a game engine and what is a game framework? But at the end of the day, they're the same thing. They are tools that help you make games. The distinction is just kind of like, it doesn't really matter too much. And I would say it's the same with scripting versus coding. Or like what is a programming language versus what is a markup language. I don't know. I guess that's kind of a good, different distinction. Like for example, I've heard people say coding in HTML, but HTML is not a coding language. It's not even a scripting language. It's a markup language. And then you could say that Lua is a scripting language and C# is a compiled language. So there's, if people want to be pedantic with their definitions and what they call things, I don't think that that's a good use of your time, in my opinion. I just say coding as a blanket term. And I also think it's okay to say engine, like game engine, as a blanket term. Because really, they do accomplish the same sort of stuff. Should you learn C++ or C# for making games? I would not recommend going about it that way. I would recommend finding a game framework or game engine that interests you, that looks cool, and whatever language it uses is what you should learn. Because once you learn that language, you'll be able to use the framework you want to use. So if you really want to make games with Unity, for example, then I would recommend learning C# because that's what you need. And if you wanted to make Unreal games, I think they use C++, or you can probably import other scripting languages to that one too. How often do I use metatables? In Lua, I actually choose not to use metatables. No particular reason other than I think they add too much complexity to the code. But I don't have any problems with people that do use them. It's not something that I opt for. Because one thing that I like about Lua is that when you read this code, it feels kind of intuitive. I don't think that there's anything here that a programmer would look at and say, I have no idea what that means. All of this stuff kind of makes sense intuitively. But when you start introducing metatables, I feel like that kind of changes things where it's not quite as obvious. And that's the main reason why. What are metatables in Lua? It changes you know, I don't even think I'm qualified to talk on them because I don't fully know. I can ask AI. We'll ask an AI real quick. What are meta tables in Lua? Meta tables in Lua are the behind-the-scenes behavior. So yeah, but they're like these things that you can apply to tables to give them unique properties. But my problem is that it just I don't like how it almost adds a layer of unpredictability to my code. No, don't ask AI. You know, when you ask an AI what the answer to something is, all it's doing is it's just Googling what the answer is. And except it's Googling it in like 100 different places, or I don't even know. It's doing it in some very like detailed way, in the same way that a human would do it. I understand that people don't really like the AI overviews or that process, you know, but at the end of the day, if all it's doing is Googling something, I think that's okay. Because also AIs tend to provide their sources on these things too. But never ask it math questions. I don't know about that. I think that it's perfectly suitable for asking math questions. Grok, is this true? You know, I could say that there are certain topics that you probably shouldn't ask AI if it's true. But when it's something objective, like what are meta tables in Lua, I think that AI is perfect. But when you ask it something like, who should be the president of the United States, I think that that's too, you know, two-sided. You don't really, it's not going to really give you a clear answer. And also, I'd be cautious of what answer it gives you. If it gave you a confident answer, I would be cautious of that. That would actually be kind of scary. Hey, Chalcase, please share your game dev journey or just a little summary of your experience. Sure. I mean, my game dev journey is all independent. I never worked at a company making games. I made games as a kid using GameMaker. Started with GameMaker 7 and worked with that for years, probably 5 or so years. And then when I was in high school, I took a coding class. First it was in I think it was a Visual Basic was the first semester, and the second semester was Java. And as I started like getting more involved with like text-based coding like this, I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to start learning a game engine that uses that. So I tried out a bunch of them, and this is what I recommend everyone to do, is if you're wanting to get involved with game development, download a bunch of the different engines. Download GameMaker, download Unity or Godot or whatever else you can find that you think is interesting. Download it because it's free. They're all free, I think. And try it out. And if it feels right, keep making games with it. And if it doesn't feel right, try something else. So that's what I did when I was like in that transitionary phase. I tried out all of them. I tried out Unity and Unreal, and I tried out Monogame and a few others that like aren't around anymore. Actually, I would have tried Godot if it was around at the time, but yeah, Godot wasn't out when I was doing that. So, or if it was out, it was brand new and no one was using it yet. LibGDX was another one I tried. I tried out a whole bunch of these different ones. I did tutorials, and I like experimented with them until I tried out Love2D, and I'm like, okay, now it's starting to click. And you know, maybe it started to click because I tried out so many different game engines and I was starting to get some experience. Or maybe it clicked because it actually is something that works with me better. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, the way I found this path for myself was just trying out all of them, and I landed here on Lua and Love2D. I just like it the most. Thanks for my programming tutorial with Lua. Awesome, I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy that I was helpful, thank you. I started with RPG Maker. I taught me logic basics. Totally. Yeah, Game Maker was the same way with me, is that Game Maker has this like drag and drop coding where you drag pieces to program your game. And I think that was really influential in teaching me the fundamentals, because it was the same thing. You had like the if statement block, and then you had the variable assignment block. You had the make this move block. It was a lot of logic, and it was really helpful. You should try Raylib if you use C, and if you use C, SDL is a little complex. You should just keep doing it. Even if it doesn't make sense now, you'll get it eventually. That's how I'm doing it, totally. Is that it's not a race. is that especially if you're young, or even if you're not young, if you're new to game development or any skill, like you have to do it for like years really before you can be comfortable with it. I always compare it to painting. Like if you were learning to paint, how many paintings or how many years of painting do you have to go through before the paintings you start producing turn out good? Like if it was me learning how to paint, I know for a fact the first painting that I make is going to be very ugly, and the next one is going to also be ugly. It's going to be a bunch of ugly paintings until maybe like the fifth one it starts to kind of look nice. It'll be like, it's not that good, it'll look okay, but I would have to make paintings for years before the paintings start to look anything remotely great. And even then, it's still, you're in competition with other people who have been painting their whole lives. So the only thing that is going to prevent you from being a good painter is if you stop painting. If you try to rush into being a painting savant and you try to paint a mural on the side of a building as your first painting and then you fail and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm not a painter. No, that would be ridiculous. The only way you can become a painter is if you paint all the time for years, and then you start to become so comfortable with it that you can produce things that are competitive. And until then, you're producing things that like look better and better, and you can feel satisfaction with your skills improving over time. It's the exact same thing with game development, except you multiply that by like more, because game development, you have to get good at coding, you have to get good at art, you have to get good at sound design. If you're making your own music, you have to make music. If you're marketing it, you have to get good at business. If you're uploading it to Steam, you have to learn how Steam works and learn how to interact with APIs and learn how to interact with all of the services that they offer. There is a lot of skills that goes into making a game. And I think that people have this timeline in their head that's like, okay, I'll learn how to code, I'll learn how to make games for a year, and then I'll make my dream game next year. But no, it's more like I'm going to make a bad game this month, I'm going to make another bad game next month, and then after that, I'll make a better game that's still kind of bad, but it's not as bad. And then maybe next year, I'll make a game that's kind of, that's like okay, and I can share it with my friends. And then a year after that, I can make a game and post it on itch.io for free. And then a year after that, I can make a game and post it on Steam and sell it for $1. And then a year after that, I can post a game to Steam and sell it for $5. And like you're building up this skill. This is a lifetime process of getting to the point where your games are actually good. I still have not sold any game for money. I've been making games my whole life, and I've made so many games, but yet I've never considered any of them to be competitive enough to sell for money. Moonshire is reaching that point. I really do think that Moonshire has a lot of potential where it's going to be good enough that I can sell it for $10. But until it reaches that point, it's a free demo. Do I hire art? Yeah, I commission artists for pixel art. I commission artists for the like illustrations. I do a lot of pixel art myself. I do a lot of artwork myself, but I pay for a lot of artwork as well. I don't really want to use I don't really want to use ChatGPT, but sometimes I don't understand code, and I just place my finger on Enter key with code written, and yeah. So this is what I mean is when you're learning any skill like coding, the only part that allows you to learn is when you overcome a challenge. So when you're learning to code, it is challenging to figure out how to code something. It is challenging to figure out, how do I make this character move to the right with my flipped camera. How do you code it so when I pressed the right arrow key, it makes the character move to the right? It takes some, it's a challenge, and you have to treat it as a challenge that you have to overcome. And when you overcome a challenge, if you want to use ChatGPT to overcome that challenge, just be cautious that it's not solving the problem for you. Because if it's solving the problem for you, and it's overcoming the challenge for you, you will not learn. You will not learn at all. You will kind of, you might absorb a little bit of knowledge of like what the code did, but you will not actually learn how to code by doing that. And the only way to learn is to suffer through that challenge. And yeah, I think that you should use online resources to kind of teach you. Maybe you can ask ChatGPT for suggestions on how to learn. I don't even know, because even that, it's just going to teach. It's just going to give you the answer. I don't really think that's how you should do it. I code only with ChatGPT. I think more people are going to start saying that, but I don't think you're going to learn how to code if ChatGPT is writing the code for you. And then that comes the existential question of, does that matter? You know, some people don't care if they learn how to code. All they care about is if they're able to produce code. I think that's misguided. I think that people are going to end up with junk products if they don't take the time to understand what their code is doing and how their code works. And sure, even if you say you're reading through it, you understand it, if it was written by someone else, you don't really, I'm sorry, there's no way to really learn how to code unless you are writing it yourself. It's a complex topic, and I'm also a hypocrite because I use ChatGPT and I use Claude for my coding. I'm an active user of AI, but also, if I had AI while I was learning, I don't think I would have ever learned. I think that the reason I'm so good at coding today is because I didn't use AI during that challenging process. If I had it to overcome that challenge for me, I think I would be sitting here without nearly as much context or knowledge about how coding works or what the logic is. It's a scary process. And you could say the same thing about any sort of skill that AI is able to do for you. It's the same with writing. If you wanted to become an expert writer, it would be foolish if you asked ChatGPT to write your story for you, or to give it a concept and then it writes your story for you. It's doing the challenging part for you. It's writing for you. Even though you could write it yourself and you're just asking an AI to do it for you, you're stretching those brain muscles. Whenever you have to code something manually, whenever you have to write something manually, you are overcoming a challenge. And the challenge is, how do I make this sound good? How do I make this look good? It's the same with artists. If artists were using AI to produce artwork, that's one thing, but they're not overcoming the challenge of, how do I make this thing look good on my own? Because if an AI can't fill in that gap, then what are you gonna do? You're stuck. Without ChatGPT, I wouldn't be as far along in my game as I am now. It is hugely helpful in finding ideas on how to code. I'm a fan. So this is what I mean, is that it's good for you to get to a product quicker. AI is a cheat code to getting to a final product faster. But since it is a cheat code to getting to the final process faster, it is removing the journey. It is removing the journey of learning how to code. And when you remove the journey, you remove the experience. I'll compare this to a video game. Imagine an RPG like Final Fantasy or something like that, where you have to level up your characters to get good levels, but you also have to give them good gear. You have to give them good weapons and good equipment. ChatGPT is like a cheat code that gives you the best gear in the game immediately, because it just produces the best stuff. But it doesn't train up your characters at all. You're still stuck at level 1. You're at level 1 with the best gear. Do you still think you can take on the final boss with no experience and the best gear? And it's maybe in some games you can. But I think in most games you can't. I think a well-balanced game requires you to combine your skills with your experience, and your both aspects of those things. So I would just be cautious that in your game development journey, if you're using an AI to do your coding for you, just make sure that you are not just getting that good gear, and you're also getting that those EXP drops as well. That's my analogy. I had a colleague who said that he was unable to code anymore without AI. I started to be aware of how I use AI for coding because I didn't want to make sure I am about to do stuff on my own. Or you want to make sure that you're always able to do stuff on your own. I mean, that's what I mean is it's like training wheels, where imagine if you learned how to ride a bike, and while you're learning how to ride a bike, it's okay to have training wheels on, But then you take them off eventually, because that's how you like actually get good at riding a bike, is you take the training wheels off. Imagine if they came out with training wheels for adults where you put the training wheels back on. Do you think eventually you would stop, you would forget how to ride a bike without training wheels? I think that eventually you would forget how to ride a bike without training wheels. If you put training wheels back on and you rode a bike for 5 years with training wheels, and then suddenly you took them off, I think that you would wobble and hobble over. I think that you would forget. And I bet it's the exact same thing with coding and with software production, where if people are super reliant on it, I bet it will cause problems. It helped you learn the basics, but after that I stopped using it. It feels much more accomplishing when you write the code yourself. I would say that's probably true with most things that AI is able to do. I talked about writing before. It's like, if AI is able to write a story that you prompted it for, sure, you have a story, but what did you get out of that experience? Did you get, you didn't become a better writer. You became better at prompting an AI to produce things that, and like, if your goal truly was just to produce a high amount of writing, then maybe an AI would be good for that. But if your goal is to become a better writer, AI would not be involved in the process at all, because it would just be robbing you of those learning opportunities. At most, I could see you using AI to like say, what are some synonyms for blank? Or you could use AI, and same with coding. I could see AI being useful for, like, you can ask it in Java, what's the function for blank? That's fine. It's the same as coding, or it's the same as like Googling the question. I think that's perfectly acceptable. But when you ask AI, what's the code to do blank? Then you're removing the fun part. Or even if it's not the fun part, you're removing the part that's challenging, and you're removing the part that teaches you things. Does require take variable from a script? It takes whatever that script returns. So when you require a file, that file, well, first, it just adds that file to the project. So if there's any global variables that are initialized in there, those globals will also be available. But if that file returns a value, which I can actually show this real quick. I've been just chatting like crazy. So I have all these libraries. Let's see, what would be a good one? This one. So this is an open source file made by Andrew Minich. This is a library that handles keyboard and not keyboard. It handles user input. So it handles like keybinds and stuff. And the way this file works is it's just a standalone Lua file. It creates this variable called baton, and at the end of the file, it returns baton. And this variable, it's a table, but it's being given all of these functions. Well, where is it? I guess player is the instance of it. Oh yeah, no. Here it is. So it has this like player variable that it uses metatables to init. This is what I mean, is that it gets kind of confusing to me when these metatables get involved, because when I read through this code, it's a little bit harder for me to understand. But now it makes a little bit more sense, is that player is kind of the root of this file. But essentially, everything in this file, all the main functions get routed back into baton, and then since this file returns baton, that means that all I have to do is call require, should probably be in require baton. This would be in game start. Here it is. Yeah, so baton, it's now a global variable in my project, and I set it equal to require. And really what I should do, someone pointed this out to me a long time ago, is you're actually supposed to use this dot format like this. Whoop. This dot format is more proper from what I understand. How does new functions work, or in general functions? So the way that functions work it's the same as any other like coding language, but in this case, a function can be assigned to a variable, and then you can call that variable as a function. Like, I love Lua so much because the way tables works, it's like everything is so modular and crazy. So in this case, when this line right here is written, it creates a function called parse source, but parse source, it's now just a local variable called parse source. So now somewhere else in this file, you can just call parse source as a function, but it's like a local function that exists within this file. And then yeah, parse source is going to return the type and value and put it into here. But then on top of that, you have tables, like source function is a table, and then you can assign functions to the table, and then now that the table kind of has like, it's like methods in an object-oriented programming language. In C#, you have methods, which are basically functions tied to a class or tied to an instance of a class. This is sort of kind of like that, where you have a table and you can assign functions to the table, but it's just like a variable contained within the table that is a function, and you can call it like a function. It's really funny. I really love Lua and its functions. It's not convoluted, it's just flexible. Scratch is great for beginners. Yeah, I'd say it's really good for beginners, just because the drag and drop concept of coding is really approachable for people. I know what functions are. I mean, for example, we have load, update, draw. Oh, what like the main functions are? Good question. So the main functions here, and actually a better example of this is that parallax thing that I was talking about earlier. I'm so excited to open source this project because this is as clean as it gets. You can't get a cleaner project than this. But this is what a Love2D project looks like. You have the load function, which right when the game starts, this function gets called. So right when the game starts, it creates a global variable called stage, and it loads in the stage file, which the stage file is just this folder called stage. The reason why I did it this way is that now, if someone wanted to take the stage code and put it into their own project, they would just need to copy this folder stage. They would copy this folder into their project, create a variable like this, and then they're done. And then now all of the code from this code base is working in their project. That's something that I've been trying to do a lot more recently, where I want to make things more modular. Well, I've been saying that for years. I've been saying modular for years, but things have been becoming more and more modular in my code, and I love it. And it's becoming so good that I'm starting to open source some of it too. But anyway, this is the first function that loads whenever the game starts. Then, this is the update loop. This function runs every single frame. So every single frame, we're gonna update the stage. Then we have the draw function. This handles everything that visually displays on the screen. We have love.draw, so every single frame, this is going to draw the stage. Then we have the keypressed function. This reads any input. So anything from the keyboard, anything from the mouse, it gets handled and passed through love.keypressed. So every time a key gets pressed, it's key press is just for keys, and then mouse press is for the mouse. So anytime a key gets pressed, it gets passed into the stage. Anytime a mouse button gets pressed, it gets passed into the stage. And this is the format how all Love2D projects work and how they're all set up. This is how Moonshire is set up. If I go back over to my Moonshire code, it's the same thing where I have love.load, love.update, love.draw, love.keypressed, key release is another one. I have mouse pressed, mouse released, wheel moved, gamepad. So this is for things like the controller, like a game controller. Gamepad pressed and gamepad axis. This is for a joystick. It can read the direction of the joystick in terms of X and Y values, because the thing about a joystick is that it's analog. It's not digital. So like a D-pad only has 4 directions, and it can only handle 4 directions. But a joystick, is analog, so it can go in infinite directions. Any direction you can think of, it can point in. You know, theoretically, up to a certain limit, I'm sure. I want to learn the fundamentals, and I think frameworks are good for that, but if I'm not learning at all, I should probably start off with something else. No, I mean, it's always going to be hard, and it always depends on what you're challenging yourself with. No matter what your framework or engine of choice is, you're going to see problems and see challenges. The slouching is real, isn't it, in the stream? I know. It's pretty bad. I understand. I need to work on that. What I really should do... I mean, how do you make a function that spawns an enemy that you can use an example in time map? Okay, I see what you're saying, and I can show you that real quick. Okay. Sorry, we had a rambunctious little lad. What happens when you require a folder instead of a file and call a function? So that's a good question. I'm sorry, I'm juggling a bunch of different things at once. But the first thing is that you were asking about how do you spawn an object based on a pointer. So like in this case, I have grass. I have these grass pointers all around here. And those grass pointers are in a plant's layer. So then in my load map, I have let's see, was grass. So here it iterates through the plant's layer, and it spawns a plant for each one. So yeah, it literally is a for loop going through every object in the plant's layer, and then for each one, it's going to call this function called spawn plant. And if I go over to plant, I have this outlined up at the top. Spawn plant is a function that accepts a few different details, like the ID of the plant and its position, and it creates a plant object with like all these details. And then after it adds all these like functions to the plant, it's going to insert the plant into the plant's list. So that plant table that was just created above this, I added it to the plant's table. And then in this plant's update function, it's going to iterate through every single plant and call the update function for it. Same with draw, if that's in here somewhere. Actually, I think I got rid of draw because it's handled somewhere else. But yeah, it's just an iterative loop that goes through everything that gets added to that list and calls an update function. Then when the map unloads, like you switch maps, it is going to unload every plant from this list and reload the new set. He stopped spamming. No, I just went ahead and removed him from the channel. There's like a option in YouTube that's like remove user from channel or hide user from channel, I think is what it was. So actually I think that's like a shadow ban. So yeah, if someone spams, I'm just gonna go ahead and shadow ban. If someone spams, like, because what he was doing is he was like typing the same letter over and over and over and over and over again. That's ridiculous. That's just being annoying and rude. If someone types the same question a couple times, that's one thing. That's no big deal. That's not that big of a deal. But like what that guy was like actually like repeatedly spamming up the entire chat, that was stupid. So you basically have three main functions in that spawn function and all other logic too. So in the spawn plant, it creates the plant object. This plant object has a bunch of built-in functions that I add to it, like plant update. I give the plant an update function. I give the plant a draw function. And yeah, then after that point, there's the update, and then there's the draw. So yeah, it is three different functions. How do I optimize my game? The only method of optimization I know is to remove stuff when they are off screen. I mean, that's a big one. That's the main thing. As long as you are cautious about the processing going on. So what that means is an example of an optimization issue. Look at my game here. Look at all of the pedals. There's a bunch of pedals floating through the screen. There was an optimization bug where after the pedal landed and deletes itself, it was still performing some calculations. It was still performing calculations on each pedal, even though it had died and was deleted. So, since it was still processing each pedal, as the game went on and more pedals spawned in, it would like clog up memory, and it was like a memory leak is what you call that. When memory and stuff is still processing, even though the stuff is not visible and is dead and deleted. That's kind of an example. It's just to be cautious of things like that. Only process things when it's necessary. In this case, it's not necessary to process a pedal after it's been deleted. Therefore, an optimization trick is to just stop processing after deletion. It's hardly a trick. That's more of like a requirement. You know, that's kind of like the bare minimum that you should do. What happens when you require a folder instead of a file? Oh, that's a good question. So that's a Lua specific thing. So in Lua, you can choose to require a specific file. Like I could choose to require stage.lookout, and then that would go into the stage folder and call this lookout.lua. Or, like you said, you can require a folder. So in this case, I'm requiring this stage folder. I'm requiring a folder. And what that does is it's going to go into the folder and look for a file called init.lua. So whenever you require a folder, it's going to go into that folder and look for init.lua. This is like a built-in thing that Lua offers. So that's the only difference, is that when you call a folder, it's the same thing as calling the folder.init. I think it's literally the same thing. So I hope that answers the question. It helps a lot? Good, I'm glad. I quit his job but to focus on my game. Yeah, exactly. It's always a tough conversation because people ask, like, are you a full-time game dev? And, oh, inspired from your game, I want to make a game of my own. Can you explain the process of making sprites and assets to the game, like character and the animation? Yeah, I can show that real quick. Let's say, how about these guys? So the way assets are made is I use this program called Ace Sprite. A-S-E-P-R-I-T-E. Ace Sprite. And this software is it's just an image editor. It's like Paint. It's like MS Paint, where it just allows you to change the colors and draw new stuff. That's all that this program is. But this program offers a lot of things, like you can add new frames to animate things. You can add new layers so that you can keep things consistent. It's really, really helpful. And then once the sprites are edited, you can export them into a PNG image, and then the PNG image is then imported into the game. So in my case, I have this folder in my game called sprites, and every single image in the game is somewhere in this folder. So like I can go into mobs, and then I can go into like let's say slime. So yeah, again, it's just another enemy. Every individual sprite for each animation is here in this folder. Is YouTube better for streaming game dev? I don't really know. Like in general, I wouldn't say Twitch or YouTube is better. The reason I'm streaming on YouTube is because my audience is already here on YouTube. I like the ads better on YouTube compared to Twitch. The VODs are better on YouTube because they get auto-uploaded to like my live tab. And, you know, playback is better on YouTube. So there's a lot to like about YouTube streams, but Twitch has its own perks as well. Twitch is like kind of more hip. I want to say that sounds like an old person. Like it's cooler. I think Twitch is like a cooler vibe, where the chat is more fun. There's more emotes on Twitch. The vibes are just kind of like more entertaining in a way. But that all being considered, I don't really care about building up a Twitch audience. I care more about growing my YouTube audience, and just the way that streams integrate on YouTube, it feels a little bit better. It feels a little bit better for me. So I'm gonna stick with YouTube streams for a while. I'll open up memberships at some point in the next month or so, because I want to monetize a little bit better. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that I think monetization on Twitch streams feels a bit more natural, because there's like a culture of subs and like the sub trains and the hypes and all that stuff. I really sound like an out of touch like old man when I talk about that stuff, but that's kind of the impression that I get with Twitch streams and YouTube streams. I don't plan to do kick streams at all, just because that's not really, I don't think that's for me. So I think that YouTube streams is where I'm going to stick with. It feels right. I like the VODs a lot. The VODs work really nicely. Yeah. Libra Sprite is not even an alternative. It is literally a Sprite. Libra Sprite, yeah, it is basically the same thing. As far as I know, it's the same thing. You know, the only reason Libra Sprite wouldn't be the same thing is if they don't consistently put out updated builds. So with a Sprite having the purchase version, you're going to have an updated, frequent, trusted build whenever new updates come out. Whereas with Libra Sprite, I don't know who the developer is, whoever puts that out, but you're just coming. It's coming from a different source, which is also like, it could be fine, but I like having it directly from Sprite, because then the developers of Sprite are distributing it, and I'm getting those updates. Is your messages getting flagged as spam? I don't think so. I have a question. Is Godot compatible for complex game mechanics like yours? I want a battle system over the map and not those turn-based ones for my project. There is no limitation of something like that. So if you want to make a game like that, Godot would be perfectly fine. If you wanted to use Love 2D, it would be perfectly fine. If you wanted to use Unity or Unreal or Game Maker, it would be totally fine. I think that there's not really a limitation in terms of complexity for any of these. I think any of them can handle any type of game. Up to a certain point. Like, if you want to make a 3D game, I always recommend a 3D engine. And if you wanted to make like an MMO, I would probably not recommend something lightweight that doesn't have any features. I would recommend something that's built for it. But beyond that, like, you really can't go wrong. I recommend Game Maker to newcomers because it's really approachable, but also you can make any type of game with Game Maker. Like, Hyper Light Drifter was made with Game Maker, and Undertale was made with Game Maker. So that covers a lot of bases for 2D games, at least. And there's lots more Game Maker games than that. So if Game Maker is enough to make any type of game, then certainly Godot is enough to make any type of game. And if Godot is enough, then Unity is enough. And if Unity is enough, then Unreal is enough, and so on, you know. Why does every game with combat have slimes? Oh, it's exactly that, because slimes are round and easy, and there's not really too much that goes into it. I really like how I animated the sprite though. Have some 99% of some sort of slime. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. It is kind of a trope, and maybe I'll reach the point where I'll take the slime out and change it with something else that's more unique. But for now, it really is just like a really solid, simple enemy that just walks towards the player. I don't really need to do anything more complex than that. Also, I like how the slimes fall from the sky. I think that's funny. Tio, Moonshire Monday. Yes, it is indeed. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everyone for being here. It's been a really good stream so far. Also, I'm noticing that there has not been any network problems. So network issues solved. I mentioned that at the beginning of stream that I'm now on a good, solid physical connection. I wasn't on one before because apparently the Ethernet port on my computer is busted or outdated, because when I plug Ethernet into my computer directly through the port, it does not get any uptime, any upload speed. The upload speed dies when I plug it in. But when I use this external this like USB Ethernet port, suddenly the issue is fixed and I get amazing megabits per second upload. So it really is crazy how weird issues like that can come up, because I was looking around online and every source was telling me, no, it's your cables. Your Ethernet cables are old, and that's why you're getting bad up speed. But no, they were wrong. It turns out that my computer's just bad. Well, I don't know what the problem is. I tried updating the drivers for the Ethernet port, but even that didn't work. How are characters in design and animated in Splash-like games like Fallout Shelter, and what are the differences in approach versus sprite games? I think that the main difference is that things are more pieced out. So, in a game like mine, where everything is sprite sheet based, you have every individual frame of the sprite, and that's cool. But once you get into really big enemies and bosses, there starts to get some wasted space. Like, look at this. Like, when you look at the sprite sheet for the Daitengu, a lot of these frames look very similar to each other, because the difference between them is not very much. Really, like, look, the difference between this frame and the one next to it is 1 pixel vertical difference. It has 1 extra pixel up here. That's the difference. And so, with that in mind, wouldn't it be better if there were fewer frames? And so I have to imagine that in a flash-based or something with high-resolution images, if you were to make a sprite sheet with very high-resolution images in each frame, I think that the sprite sheet would end up being very big and huge in too many frames compared to my pixel art. My pixel art, this is not very big. This is like not very much data being taken up duplicating these frames like this. But if this was a high-res flash-based something or other, you probably wouldn't want to do a sprite sheet approach. What instead you could do is you could separate this guy out into pieces. So you could separate the head into a piece like this. Okay. Whoops. Well, whatever. And then you can have the hand set to its own piece. And then you have the body set to its own piece. And then you have the cloud set to its own piece. And then with those pieces separated, you could animate it more programmatically. So, like, let's say I imported these individual pieces into my game. I wouldn't need to have a sprite sheet having it, like, move up and down and like, shimmy and stuff. Instead, I could programmatically make the hand move up when it needs to. I can place him in different positions programmatically. I can have him lean forward by just moving his head forward. I don't need to make a whole new sprite. Instead, I can just take the pieces and move them around. I think that that's how flash-based games or anything with like complex high-res sprites is going to work. I think about Castle Crashers. Castle Crashers works like this, I know for sure, because I heard them talk about this. Let me find an image of this. So in Castle Crashers, take a look at these characters on screen. Look at this like gray guy in the upper left corner compared to the blue guy, compared to the red guy, compared to the king, compared to the bear. All of these characters are pretty similar. They're all very similar. In fact, they're so similar that they share the same skeleton. They all share the same skeleton and they all can do the same animations. It's just they're swapping out the pieces. They swapped out the bear head for the bear character up here, And instead they swapped out the red head for the red guy down here. They swapped out the king head for the king character over here. They all have the same animations, the same skeleton. They just have different body pieces, different arm pieces, different head pieces, and it results in different characters. Can I show a co-example? Not specifically of this. In my game, I don't think I'm doing that. I think in my game, I'm not doing that. The only example I have of that is something like this character. So this character is a big worm, and you can see that it doesn't have an eyeball. The eyeball is this little piece over here. And programmatically, I add the eyeball in after the fact. So I don't want to have this eyeball attached to the sprite sheet like this. It looks so cursed. It looks so disturbing. Instead, I want the eyeball to be a piece. And then somewhere in the code, the piece then takes this little eyeball section and draws it at the appropriate position. Because, like, let's say if the player was on this side to the right of the monster, the eyeball should be facing to the right. But if the player was on the left side, then you would want the eyeball to be facing this way, right? So it's like you're animating the eyeball without needing a separate sprite. Because, like, wouldn't it be obnoxious if I had to take all of these images and create a different version for each of them with the eyeball looking in different directions? That would be ridiculous. Godot has a great integrated editor for such animations. Yeah, I bet it does. I would say that this is something where I do wish I had an engine to work with, because there are challenges with mapping this eyeball to the correct position on the face when the face changes position. Because, like, look, the face is right here, like, kind of towards the middle of the body in this frame, but in this frame, it's, like, all the way up here. I need to actually code that into the game somehow to account for where is the head of this worm boss on any given frame. You're the GOAT. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's such a nice thing for you to say. Appreciate that. Wouldn't it be even easier to make 9 versions of the head and only do the body as its own piece? Yeah, I would say that in this case, for this particular enemy, it would be better to separate the head from the body, because in most of these frames, the flower is the same exact shape. There are some exceptions, though, that we would need to account for, like when she's diving. When the flower is diving, look at this frame. This frame is, like, angled downwards. That would be the only time when we would need an exception, or like here. But overall, no. Most of the time, the head shape is pretty consistent. Like, we could even give it, like, a very simple animation so that it, like, flows subtly. I think that'd be pretty nice, pretty neat. I combined neat and nice into nice. But if she's dicing, wouldn't she be looking at you probably? Or if she is dicing, she wouldn't be looking at you probably. Oh, dashing, yeah. So the thing is, though, like, even if dashing, it still looks kind of good when she's looking backwards. So like, this is when she dashes forward. Like, sure, it does make more sense that she would be looking this way to, like, down. Sorry. My camera's flipped. I can't point. But also, like, let's say that the player dodges out of the way and he's up above over here. I think it would still look good if the eyeball is looking up this direction. Like, it's a little awkward that it's looking up. It's a little awkward that it's looking up when the head is actually facing downwards. But I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks fine. And that's what I do in the game, at least in the demo. Yeah, no mobile yet. Mobile is something that I would like to try, though. I shouldn't have saved that. I'm gonna undo that. I don't want to save those changes. Also, I named that character Mom. Not after my mom. I named it Mom because I wanted to give birth to... Yeah, look. I wanted to give birth to, like, gross fly enemies. And I'm like, oh, well, if it's giving birth, that makes it a mom. So I called it Mom. in that case, it makes sense. I mean, when you attack someone, the momentum still travels through your body, but that doesn't stop you from following the other one with your eyes. Yeah, exactly. Is that an eyeball is kind of an exception where it's okay if your eyeballs are still tracking something, even if it's not the direction you're facing. But that is an option too, by the way. Let's say that this boss has two different states. One state is it's looking at the player. The other state is it's looking at its movement direction. I bet there are times where it will look better, like in that case we just talked about. It probably will look better if during this frame it's not looking at the player, instead it's looking at the movement direction. Like maybe this frame is like moving straight down and you're like down. I think that would actually a better alternative. It's like a nice balance between both options. Do I know the game Micro Mages? No, I have not. I've not heard of that. Am I gonna make a blinking animation? Oh, that's a good idea. So that's a good point. So let's say if I wanted to do a blinking animation for this character, that would be hard to do in my current setup, right? Because right now, the head is like attached to the body. And if I wanted the eye to blink, where like the whole flower closes, I would need to add a bunch of alternatives to all these different, like, all these different poses. Sorry, I'm still a bit stuffy. But if the head was detached, like this, if the head was detached and it just got drawn on top every frame, you could potentially have, an animation for it, so that the head has its own state. The head could have like a blink timer to it that's independent from the rest of these animations. Because that's the challenge, is that when you have an animation... Here, I have another good example. Here we go. We have the eye wasp. So the eye wasp looks like this. But you'll notice that you can't see its wings. Its wings are not a part of the sprite. Instead, the wings are separated out. Pippa, hi, welcome in. Instead, the wings are separated out so that the wings can have their own animation cycle. Because if these wings were tied directly to this sprite sheet, that would make things a lot more complicated. Because then I would need to make sure that the speed of this animation matches the speed of the wings. Allfather, hi, welcome back. Thank you again for the donation. Whoops, let me pull up the stream again. Because my stream display is definitely behind. My stream is super behind. I need to refresh. Yeah, thank you again. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I was saying with these eye wasp, I like having the wings separated from the body, because then I can have the wings like moving really, really fast. I think I can show this actually. Oh, I can't. I'm sorry. Whoops, he killed me. I'll show it next week. I'll have this enemy set back up for next week. But yeah, right now, the way this is set up is so that this animation here, where it's like bobbing up and down, it moves at a different rate compared to how fast the wings are flapping. And since there's a distinction, it makes sense to have them kind of separated. Do I use Texture Atlas for your sprites, or just manually draw them and loop through them for the animation? I don't really think I use a Texture Atlas. Instead, what I use is I have this open source file called Animate, and it probably does use like a list. Yeah, so the way that that Animate works is you define a grid, which like is able to chop the image up into the individual frames. Then you have like the frames table, which has details on what each of the frames are and like what animations they're parts of. And you can use this file to generate an animation file, which then you just update and draw. So it's kind of like, it basically is texture atlases, but it's handled through this open source software. You get yourself into Lua too someday? I mean, I'm always for it. More people using Lua, the better. Because that's another thing I wanted to mention is the music player right now. How above my head it's showing the song title of what song is playing. And the way I got that working is actually kind of complicated because there's not really a good way to do that. You would think that this would be really easy and simple, but I have these songs playing from MP3s, and so I wanted the MP3 title to display above my head. And there's not really anything good out there that does that, besides some sketchy scripts, so I just wrote my own. There's this music player, an open source music player called MPV. And MPV allows you to write Lua scripts. So I wrote a Lua script that you can attach into MPV, and it writes the title to a file. So now, like you just saw it above me, the title of the song changed because this script here is attached to MPV, and whenever the song changes in MPV, this script is going to update that text file, and then in OBS, I can have that text file be displayed above my head. You're trying out LoveTD coming from Roblox Studio? Didn't like Godot that much. I mean, yeah, so it's going to vary from person to person. I think LoveTD is very good, but, you know, in general, probably a bit steeper of a learning curve compared to something like Unity or Godot. Roblox Studio is probably even more approachable, but it's cool that you have some experience with Lua already, with working with Roblox Studio. That's neat. You were my whole inspiration for LoveTD, Lua, and game dev. Awesome, I'm cool. That's so nice of you to say. Thank you, GVix. I love Castle Crashers. We'll probably give the stream a few more minutes, and then we'll wrap things up. I did start 5 minutes late today, so we'll go for an extra 5 minutes. And also, I need to think of a better setup for my chair, because I think that I'm, like, hunched over constantly, and, like, it makes it look like I got a big belly, or like my belly's sticking out, because I have a pillow underneath of me. Castle Crashers. Yeah, I was showing Castle Crashers because someone was asking about making characters more modular, and I was showing how, like, each of the human characters are basically the same skeleton, but with different pieces. Like, the bear is the same body as these guys, same animations. It's just a different piece added to them. That's why, like, in Castle Crashers, you can play as any character, too. I think you can play as the bear, because it's the same animations as every other character. It's the same skeleton. What's for lunch? It is McDonald's Monday. And not only is it Moonshire Monday, it is McDonald's Monday. Oh, 2D RPG, those are great. I like stories and design. Yeah, it's a very big task, though. I like stories and design, too. That's a really fun part. But coding an RPG that supplements all that stuff is the challenging part, and it's really, really tough to reach a point where your game like justifies all the content you provide for it. I love telling a good story, but there needs to be a good game underneath of it. And same with design. Like, it can look amazing, but if the game isn't fun, like, it has to be the whole package. It's so tough to get that whole thing all in one. I love art, music, and coding. How do I choose which one to focus on in choosing game design? I mean, personally, I never really focused on one of them. You can make games on your own from scratch right now. I like, download Game Maker or Godot, and just try making a really simple game. Start with something easy. I always say start with Pong or Space Invaders. Start with something super, super easy and make a game and make it all by yourself. You said you like art, music, and coding? Try making Pong, where you make all the assets. You make your own images, or if you're doing a 3D game engine, your own 3D models. Do all the coding yourself. Learn what that process is like. With Game Maker, it's drag and drop. With Godot, it's the GD script. And if you like music, yeah, then make a little song for it. Make a song and then put it in the background and have it loop. Get some experience with that too. Once you do all that and you make a really simple game, like, who knows how long it might take. A week, it might take a month or a few months. It doesn't matter how long it takes. But after you do that, that's the first step. You'll get a lot of context and a lot of experience for what making games is like, if you do all of that. And you'll get better at coding, you'll get better at art, and you'll get better at music if you do that. So it's a win-win-win if you make Pong and make it as easy as possible. Or make it like as simple as possible, just so you can finish it. It's not a Childcade stream unless he recommends making Pong. Exactly. Exactly. And yep, on that note, I think that I am ready to call it quits for the day. It was a really good stream. I'm really happy so many people were able to show up and be a part of this. Because, yeah, there's a lot of differences here. I have the new music player above me. I have the new angle, different camera setup. And best of all, better network connection. The network connection was so much better this time. I think that the stream went so much smoother than normal. And I'm really, really happy with how today's stream went. But I am going to call it quits. I think that about wraps things up. Thank you so much for being here, and I will be back next week for yet another Moonshire Monday. Thank you all so much. Bye, everyone.